They say trust is the cornerstone of every marriage, but for me, trust had started to feel like a fragile pane of glass, cracked, yet not shattered. My name is Jack, and I had been married to Rachel for nearly 24 years. We had built a life together, raising 2 kids, juggling careers, and dreaming about our future. But lately, something felt off. It was subtle at first, like a faint whisper of unease at the back of my mind. I could not pinpoint it, but the feeling gnawed at me, growing louder with each passing day. It all began innocently enough, or so I thought. A couple, Adam and Stephanie, had moved in next door about 5 years ago. At first, they seemed like a nice addition to the neighborhood. Adam, with his endless supply of energy and charisma, became the social glue for our little street. Stephanie, more reserved but kind, seemed like the perfect counterbalance to his boisterous personality. Rachel and I got along with him right away, spending weekends grilling together, exchanging stories, and enjoying a few laughs. But Adam had a mischievous streak, a love for practical jokes that bordered on the absurd. At first, it was harmless. Plastic spiders in the mailbox, whoopee cushions at dinner parties. Everyone laughed, including me. But as time went on, his jokes grew more personal, and I often found myself the unwilling target. The laughter, which once felt shared, started to feel isolating. And the worst part? Rachel seemed to adore every second of it. One summer evening, we were all at Adam and Stephanie's place for a barbecue. The air was warm, the grill was sizzling, and the scent of smoky ribs filled the backyard. Stephanie and I chatted near the patio while Rachel and Adam disappeared into the kitchen to fetch drinks. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. When they finally emerged, Rachel's hair was slightly mussed, her cheeks flushed, and Adam sported a smug grin that made my stomach churn. "Sorry for the wait," Adam announced, his voice loud and cheery. "We were just debating which wine to bring out." Rachel laughed. "Too hard, too forced. Adam's got a ridiculous collection. It took forever to decide." I tried to push the moment out of my mind, chalking it up to my own insecurities. But that night, as we lay in bed, I could not shake the image of them emerging together. Rachel turned to me, her expression soft but unreadable. "You seemed quiet tonight. Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." The truth was, I was not okay. Over the next few months, I started noticing little things. Adam's jokes directed at Rachel, the way he lingered in conversations with her, and how Rachel seemed to glow under his attention. It was like a storm brewing on the horizon, dark clouds gathering while I stood helpless beneath an open sky. The breaking point came on a day I will never forget. It was supposed to be a simple Saturday afternoon, a trip to the beach with Adam and Stephanie. The sun was high, the waves crashing, and the sand warm beneath our feet. But while Stephanie and I watched from our chairs, Rachel and Adam's laughter rang out like an unspoken secret. They teased each other, making crude jokes about the tourists wandering by. It was not just laughter. It was the kind that drew attention, that excluded everyone else in the vicinity. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably beside me, her brow furrowed. "What do you think they're laughing about?" she asked, her voice strained. "I do not know," I replied, though the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. Later that evening, when we returned home, I confronted Rachel. "Do you think Adam's jokes are funny?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean the way you laugh with him. It is like nothing else matters when you two are talking." Rachel sighed, her expression a mix of frustration and dismissal. "Jack, you are reading too much into this. Adam is just a goofball. You know that, but I did not know that anymore." And as the days turned into weeks, the cracks in our trust deepened. Rachel's assurances felt hollow, her laughter distant. And Adam? He seemed to thrive on the tension, his smirk a constant reminder that he was in control of something I could not see. One night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all became unbearable. Something was wrong, terribly, deeply wrong, and I could not ignore it any longer. My heart raced as a chilling thought crept into my mind. What if this was not just my imagination? What if the glass of trust between Rachel and me was about to shatter? With that, I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The morning after that restless night, I woke up determined to put my suspicions to rest. But as the days dragged on, my resolve faltered. How do you confront someone you love without tearing everything apart? Worse yet, how do you confront a feeling, an unshakable sense that the life you thought was solid is suddenly on unstable ground? It was Adam's next stunt that finally pushed things over the edge. A few weeks later, Rachel and I were invited to Adam and Stephanie's house for dinner. It was supposed to be a casual evening, wine, laughter, maybe a card game or two. But as we walked through their front door, I felt an unease settle over me, the kind that makes your skin crawl even though you cannot explain why. Dinner went smoothly enough at first. Stephanie's soft-spoken kindness kept the conversation light, and Rachel seemed relaxed. But Adam? Adam was unusually quiet. He kept glancing at me, a smug, almost predatory look in his eyes. I should have seen it coming. After we finished eating, Adam suddenly leaned back in his chair and clapped his hands together. "Hey, Jack," he said, grinning ear to ear. "How about giving me a hand with something in the basement? Got a little project I need some help with." I glanced at Rachel, who avoided my gaze. "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. "What do you need?" "Oh, nothing major," Adam replied, standing up and motioning for me to follow. "Just need someone to hold a pipe in place while I tighten a few bolts." The basement was dimly lit and cluttered, filled with half-finished projects and discarded tools. Adam led me to a support post near the furnace, where a small metal box hung from a wire attached to the ceiling. "Just hold this box up here for a second," Adam instructed, handing me the device. "I'll grab the tools and be right back." I held the box in place, my arms stretched awkwardly overhead. Adam rummaged through a toolbox behind me, muttering to himself. Then, without warning, I heard two sharp clicks, metallic, deliberate. I froze, my stomach dropping. "What the hell, Adam?" I shouted, twisting my wrists. The cold, unforgiving bite of handcuffs locked me to the post. Adam stepped back into view, his grin wider than ever. "Relax, Jack. It's just a prank." "A prank?" I bellowed. "Get me out of these damn things right now." But Adam ignored me. Instead, he turned to the stairs, where Rachel was standing, a coy smile on her face. "Ready for the main event?" he asked her. Rachel hesitated, glancing at me briefly before looking back at Adam. "This is ridiculous," she said, though there was a nervous laugh in her voice. "You've gone too far." "Oh, come on," Adam said, his tone playful but edged with something darker. "It'll be fun." Before I could shout again, Rachel shrugged and followed him upstairs, leaving me alone in the dim basement. My mind raced as I pulled against the cuffs, but they did not budge. I shouted until my throat was raw, but no one came back. Then I heard it, the faint creak of bed springs, the unmistakable sound of laughter floating down from above. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a hammer blow of betrayal. I strained against the post, my wrists raw and bloody, but it was no use. The laughter upstairs turned to muffled whispers, and then silence. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had realized how far they had taken things and would come back to release me. But the next sounds crushed that hope. It was Rachel's voice, low and breathless. "Adam, stop," she said, her words barely audible through the floorboards. But there was no anger in her tone. It was the kind of protest that held no real intention of being enforced. Then came a sound I will never forget, the soft thud of a shoe hitting the carpet, followed by Rachel's unmistakable laugh, light and carefree. My breath caught in my throat as rage and heartbreak tore through me like a wildfire. "Rachel!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "Get down here right now." No response. Just more muffled movement, more laughter. Every sound chipped away at my sanity, leaving me raw and broken. When the door to the basement finally opened, I was too exhausted to yell anymore. Rachel stood at the top of the stairs, her hair tousled, her face flushed. Adam was behind her, smirking as he handed her a key. "Relax, Jack," Rachel said, descending the steps slowly. "It was just a joke." "A joke?" I growled, my voice low and trembling with fury. "Do I look like I'm laughing?" She unlocked the cuffs, her hands trembling slightly, but I pulled away from her touch the moment I was free. My wrists were raw, smeared with blood, and I cradled them as I backed away. "This," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage, "is not a joke. You have no idea what you've just done." Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. "Do not follow me. Do not call me. I'm done." As I stormed up the stairs, Adam called after me. "Come on, Jack. Lighten up, man. It's all in good fun." I stopped at the front door, turning to face them both. "Fun? You'll regret this, Adam. You too, Rachel. I promise you that." And with that, I walked out into the cool night, the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders, determined to make sense of the chaos they had unleashed. I drove home in a haze, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. The house Rachel and I had shared for over 2 decades loomed ahead, its welcoming warmth now a hollow shell of what it once represented. Memories of our life together flooded my mind. The laughter, the arguments, the moments of love and partnership that had defined us. But tonight, all of that felt like a lie. When I entered, the silence hit me like a freight train. The absence of her voice, the echo of the door closing behind me, it was deafening. My hands, raw and bleeding from the handcuffs, shook as I reached for the sink. The sting of soap on my torn skin brought tears to my eyes, but I did not know if they were from the pain or the overwhelming betrayal coursing through me. After cleaning up, I poured myself a stiff drink and sat on the couch, staring at the darkened TV screen. What had just happened? Was it really just a prank, as they claimed? Or was there more to it? The sounds I had heard in that basement played over and over in my mind, like a record stuck on the most damning track. Rachel's laughter, her soft voice, those were not the sounds of a joke. They were something else entirely, and the thought made my stomach turn. Hours passed before my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Rachel's name lit up the screen. For a moment, I considered answering, but the memory of her face as she handed me the key stopped me. I let it ring, the sound grating on my nerves until it finally stopped. A text came through moments later. "Jack, please. We need to talk." It was nothing, I swear. Just a stupid joke. "Call me." I turned off my phone and threw it onto the couch. Talking to her now would solve nothing. I needed time to think, to process, to decide what came next. The next morning, the world felt different, like the air itself was heavier. I went through the motions, showering, eating breakfast, but my mind was miles away. As I bandaged my wrists, the physical wounds felt like a mockery of the deeper, unseen ones. Each throb of pain reminded me of the humiliation I had endured, of the love I had believed in that now felt tainted. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. My pulse quickened as I opened the door, half expecting to see Rachel standing there, teary-eyed and begging for forgiveness. But it was not her. It was Stephanie. "Jack," she said, her voice soft, her expression a mix of anger and concern. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, and she entered, clutching her purse tightly. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a tension that matched my own. "I need to talk to you about last night," she said as we sat in the living room. "About Adam. About Rachel." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "After you left, I confronted Adam," she admitted, her voice shaking. "He brushed it off, said it was just a joke, but I could tell he was lying. I know him too well." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees, my voice low. "What did he say?" Stephanie hesitated, then met my gaze. "He admitted there was more to it, that it was not just a prank. They planned it, Jack. Both of them, Adam and Rachel. They wanted to see how far they could push you, to see if you would snap." A cold anger settled over me, heavier than anything I had felt the night before. "Why? Why would they do that?" She shook her head. "I do not know. Adam has always had this cruel streak. But Rachel? I do not understand it. I thought she loved you. I thought she respected you." The room fell silent as her words sank in. I stood, pacing the length of the living room. "This is not just some joke, Stephanie. They crossed a line. They broke something that might never be fixed." "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I am so sorry." For what it is worth, I believe you. I know how much you love Rachel. I have seen it. Her words brought no comfort. What about you? I asked. What are you going to do? Stephanie's lips tightened into a thin line. I do not know, but I cannot stay in a marriage where I do not trust my husband. If Adam can do this, what else is he capable of? Her honesty mirrored my own thoughts. We were both standing at the edge of something irreversible, staring into the void of broken trust. Before she left, Stephanie turned to me, her expression resolute. You deserve better than this, Jack. Do not let them convince you otherwise. After she was gone, I sat alone, her words echoing in my mind. I did not know what the future held, but one thing was clear. The life I had known was over. Whether Rachel and I could rebuild, or whether I even wanted to try, those were questions I was not ready to answer. But the anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they would not be ignored. Not anymore. And as I sat there, the weight of it all pressing down on me, I realized I had to confront Rachel. Not with questions, not with pleas for honesty, but with the truth I already knew. It was time to face what had been hiding in the shadows. It took me the rest of the day to summon the courage to face Rachel. I told myself I needed clarity, that the gaping wound between us had to be addressed head-on. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wanted answers, and I wanted to see if she had the guts to be honest. It was late evening by the time I drove to her sister's house, where I figured she might be staying. The driveway was empty except for Sylvia's car, and as I parked, my heart pounded like a war drum. I knocked, and Sylvia answered, her face a mix of pity and discomfort. Jack, she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. She's upstairs. She's been a mess all day. Good, I muttered, walking past her. Sylvia didn't follow, just watched as I climbed the staircase to the room Rachel was using. When I reached the door, I didn't knock. I opened it and stepped inside, finding her sitting on the bed, her face streaked with tears, holding a tissue in her trembling hands. She looked up, startled. Jack, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it as I crossed my arms. Are you? I asked, my voice calm but cold. Or are you just sorry you got caught? Her lower lip quivered, and she shook her head. It wasn't like that. It wasn't what you think. Then enlighten me, I said, my tone sharp, because from where I was standing, or should I say handcuffed, it sure looked like you and Adam were getting a little too comfortable. Rachel's face crumpled, and she buried it in her hands. It was a mistake, she sobbed. A stupid, cruel mistake. Nothing happened, Jack. I swear. I let her cry for a moment before responding. Nothing happened? I repeated. You expect me to believe that after what I heard? After what Stephanie told me? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. Stephanie? What did she say? She said you and Adam planned this, I replied, my voice rising. That you wanted to see how far you could push me. That you thought it would be funny to humiliate me. Rachel's face went pale, and she shook her head violently. No, that's not true. Adam, he came up with the idea. He thought it would be harmless, just a prank. I didn't think it would go that far. Harmless. I barked, taking a step closer. Do you have any idea how it felt to be down there, listening to you two? To hear you laughing with him, whispering to him, while I was chained up like a damn animal. She stood, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Jack, please, she pleaded. It wasn't real. I wasn't doing anything with him. I was just going along with it because I didn't know how to stop it. That's your excuse? I asked, my voice heavy with disbelief. You didn't know how to stop it? Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head again. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it. I should have never let it happen. But I was scared, Jack. Scared of how you'd react. Scared of what it would mean for us. I laughed bitterly. Scared? Of me? That's rich. You weren't scared when you followed him upstairs. You weren't scared when you left me in that basement. So tell me, Rachel, what are you scared of now? She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I'm scared of losing you, she said, her voice barely audible. I stared at her, the anger in me warring with the pain. For a moment, I considered the possibility that she was telling the truth, that maybe this really was just a prank gone too far. But then I remembered Stephanie's words, Adam's smug grin, and the sounds from that night that still haunted me. "I don't know if I can believe you," I said finally. "You've lied to me once already. Why should I trust you now?" Rachel's shoulders slumped, and she sank back onto the bed, her face in her hands. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't have a good answer for that. But I love you, Jack. I always have. And I will do whatever it takes to prove it to you." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman I had built a life with for 24 years wasn't capable of the kind of betrayal that had played out in my mind. But the cracks in our trust ran too deep, and I didn't know if they could ever be repaired. "I need time," I said finally, my voice flat. "I need time to figure out what comes next." Rachel nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. "Take all the time you need," she said. "I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes, Jack. I promise." I turned and left the room without another word, the sound of her sobs following me down the stairs. Sylvia looked up as I passed her, but I didn't stop to explain. I needed air. I needed space. And most of all, I needed to decide if the life I had with Rachel was worth salvaging, or if it was already too late. The drive home was quiet, but my mind was anything but. Rachel's words echoed in my head. Her tears, her pleas, her declarations of love. But they felt hollow, like a song sung too late to matter. The image of her standing there, broken and remorseful, warred with the sounds I had heard in that basement. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman I had loved for more than 2 decades wasn't capable of such cruelty. But doubt had planted itself deep in my chest, growing thorns that pricked with every thought. When I walked through my front door, the house felt colder than ever. The silence was suffocating, the weight of the empty rooms pressing down on me. I dropped my keys on the counter, grabbed a bottle of whiskey, and poured myself a glass. For a long time, I just sat there, staring into the amber liquid, hoping it would offer answers I couldn't find on my own. It was nearly midnight when my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, but when it rang again, I glanced at the screen. Stephanie. My stomach twisted as I answered. "Jack," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "You need to come over. Now." "What's going on?" I asked, already reaching for my jacket. "It's Adam," she said. "I found something. Something you need to see." I arrived at her house in minutes. Stephanie met me at the door, her face pale and set with grim determination. She led me inside without a word, guiding me to her home office. On her desk sat a laptop, its screen glowing faintly in the darkened room. "What is this?" I asked, my pulse quickening. Stephanie hesitated before answering. "After you left last night, I couldn't shake the feeling that Adam was hiding something. He's been acting so secretive lately. So when he went out this evening, I went through his computer." She clicked on a folder labeled private, and my heart sank as a series of video files appeared on the screen. Each was dated, and my eyes immediately landed on one from the night of the so-called prank. "What's on them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Stephanie clicked on the file. The video opened, showing Adam's bedroom. The angle was slightly off, as though the camera had been placed hastily, but it was clear enough. My stomach churned as the footage began to play. At first, it seemed innocent enough. Adam was sitting on the edge of the bed, laughing about something. Then Rachel appeared in the frame, her expression hesitant. She sat beside him, and they started talking. The audio was muffled, but their body language was clear, too clear. My fists clenched as Adam leaned closer, his hand brushing Rachel's arm. She didn't pull away. The conversation continued, their words growing softer, their laughter quieter. And then it happened. Adam leaned in and kissed her. Rachel froze for a moment, and for a fleeting second, I thought she might push him away. But she didn't. She kissed him back. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Turn it off," I said, my voice sharp. Stephanie paused the video, her hand trembling on the mouse. "Jack, turn it off," I repeated, my chest tight with rage. She did, and we sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on both of us. I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to say something, to do something, but I was frozen in place, my mind racing. "It doesn't mean they slept together," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "It doesn't excuse what happened, but maybe it was just that. Just a kiss." I shook my head, pacing the room. "It doesn't matter," I said, my voice trembling. "A kiss is enough. The fact that she let it happen, that she didn't stop it, that's enough." Stephanie didn't argue. Instead, she stood and placed a hand on my arm, her touch grounding me. "I'm sorry, Jack," she said. "I wish there was something I could do." Her kindness was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse. "But this isn't your fault." I left shortly after. The video burned into my mind. When I got home, I poured another drink, but it did nothing to dull the pain. I felt like a man stranded in a storm, battered by waves of anger, heartbreak, and confusion. The life I thought I knew was gone, and I was left standing in its wreckage, unsure of what to do next. Rachel had sworn nothing happened. She had begged for my forgiveness, promised to prove her love. But now, with the truth staring me in the face, those promises felt meaningless. Whether or not she and Adam had gone further didn't matter. The damage was done, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one thought consumed me. I had to end this. Not with questions or accusations, but with finality. Rachel had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. The tension in my chest refused to loosen. Rachel's confession had rattled me to my core, but it wasn't enough to quiet the storm in my mind. She claimed Stephanie was the true manipulator, the architect behind this nightmare, but could I trust her? Or was this just another calculated move to shift the blame? Every word Rachel had said replayed in my head, feeding my doubts and pulling me deeper into a spiral of anger and confusion. Stephanie, however, had her own shadow. Her actions had always seemed too perfectly timed. The videos, her support, the way she drove a wedge between Rachel and me, it all lined up too neatly. But if she really was in love with me, as Rachel claimed, why had she involved Adam in the first place? And why keep the charade going for so long? I decided to test both of them. I called Stephanie under the guise of needing advice, and she responded with her usual eagerness. She invited me to her house that evening, her tone full of warmth and concern. When I arrived, Stephanie greeted me at the door, her smile a mix of friendliness and something else, something I couldn't quite place. She ushered me into the living room, where 2 glasses of wine were already poured. "You sounded upset on the phone," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "What's on your mind?" I leaned forward, keeping my tone even. "Rachel told me something interesting. She said you've been orchestrating everything, that you've been trying to sabotage my marriage." Stephanie froze for just a second, a flicker of surprise in her eyes before her expression softened. She laughed lightly, a sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course she'd say that. She's desperate, Jack. She knows she's losing you, so she's trying to make me the villain." "Maybe," I said, watching her closely. "But it's a strange claim to make, don't you think? She said you were in love with me." Her smile faltered, and she looked down at her glass. "I won't lie to you, Jack. I care about you. A lot. But that doesn't mean I'd go out of my way to ruin your marriage. Rachel's doing a fine job of that on her own." I let her words hang in the air before responding. "Then explain the video. Why did you give it to me? What did you hope I'd do with it?" Stephanie hesitated, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. "I wanted you to see the truth. I wanted you to know what Rachel's capable of. She doesn't respect you, Jack. She doesn't deserve you." Her voice was steady, but there was a note of something darker beneath it, a possessiveness that sent a chill down my spine. I sat back, studying her. "And Adam? What's his role in all of this?" Stephanie's jaw tightened. "Adam's an idiot," she said sharply. "He took things too far. I told him to back off, but he doesn't listen. He never does." Her words seemed rehearsed, like she'd been waiting for this conversation. I decided to push her further. "Rachel also told me something else. She said the prank wasn't Adam's idea. It was yours." Stephanie's eyes flashed, her composure slipping for just a moment. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself, glancing toward the window as though she was stalling for time. That's ridiculous, she said finally. Rachel's lying to you, Jack. She's trying to save herself. Maybe, I said again, standing. But it's starting to feel like everyone's lying to me. I left before she could respond, her protests following me out the door. Back at home, I poured myself a drink, my thoughts racing. Stephanie's behavior had confirmed my suspicions, but it didn't absolve Rachel. She had still gone along with the prank, still kissed Adam, still broken my trust. No matter who had orchestrated it, she wasn't innocent. But what if Rachel was right about Stephanie? What if she had been pulling the strings all along, feeding Adam's ego and stoking Rachel's resentment to tear us apart? And if she was willing to do that, what else was she capable of? As I sat in the quiet of my living room, I realized I had to know the full truth. Not just Rachel's version or Stephanie's, but all of it. And there was only one person who could give me that: Adam. The thought of confronting him made my stomach churn, but it had to be done. If there was any hope of untangling this web of lies, I needed to face the man at the center of it all. And this time, I wouldn't leave without answers. Adam was the wild card. The one person in this tangled mess who thrived on chaos and didn't seem to care about the fallout. Confronting him felt like walking into a lion's den. But I needed answers. He was the key to understanding the depths of Stephanie's manipulation, Rachel's betrayal, and his own role in this twisted game. I called Adam late that night, keeping my voice calm. I need to talk to you. Face to face. About what? He replied, his tone casual but with an undercurrent of amusement. You know what? I said sharply. Rachel, Stephanie, everything. No more games. He laughed, a low, grating sound that made my skin crawl. All right, Jack. Come by tomorrow. Let's clear the air. The next afternoon, I found myself standing on his porch. The house was quiet, unnervingly so, as he opened the door with a grin that was as smug as ever. Jack, come on in. I stepped inside, the air heavy with tension. Adam led me to the living room, where he flopped onto the couch and motioned for me to sit. I stayed standing. Cut the crap, Adam, I said, crossing my arms. What's your endgame here? Why did you play along with Rachel's prank? Why did you let this spiral out of control? He chuckled, leaning back like he didn't have a care in the world. Endgame? There's no endgame, Jack. I just like having fun. Fun. My voice rose, anger bubbling to the surface. You call humiliating me fun? You call ruining my marriage fun? Adam's smirk widened. Oh, come on. Lighten up. It was all Rachel's idea anyway. She wanted to push your buttons, and I just helped her along. You've got to admit, it was pretty brilliant. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out. Brilliant? It was cruel. And you didn't just help. Stephanie told me everything. You were in on it from the start. His expression flickered, just for a moment, before he recovered. Stephanie's got a big mouth, he said with a shrug. But yeah, I guess you could say I had a hand in it. Rachel wanted revenge, and I gave her the tools. What can I say? I like stirring the pot. I stepped closer, towering over him. And what about Stephanie? What's her role in all this? Adam's grin faded slightly, and he sat up straighter. Stephanie, he trailed off, scratching his chin. She's got her own agenda, Jack. She always has. You think she's your friend? She's been playing you just as much as Rachel has. Why? I demanded. What does she get out of this? Adam shrugged. Maybe she's tired of being stuck with me. Maybe she's got a thing for you. Or maybe she just likes to watch people squirm. Hell, I don't know. All I know is, you're not as innocent as you think you are, Jack. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I snapped. Adam stood, his smirk returning. It means you've been blind to the cracks in your marriage for years. Rachel didn't wake up one day and decide to ruin your life. You did that all on your own. His words hit me like a slap, and I staggered back a step. You don't know anything about my marriage. Oh, don't I? He said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. Rachel's been miserable for years, Jack. She told me all about it. How you ignored her, took her for granted, made her feel like a ghost in her own home. All I did was give her an outlet. You're lying, I said. though the conviction in my voice wavered. Am I? Adam crossed his arms, his grin fading into something colder. Ask her yourself. Better yet, ask Stephanie. She's the one who told Rachel to confront you in the first place. Guess you were too busy wallowing in self-pity to notice. I didn't respond. My mind raced, torn between anger and doubt. Could there be truth in Adam's words? Had I been so focused on my own grievances that I missed what was happening right in front of me? I'm done listening to your crap, I said finally, stepping back. You've got nothing to offer but lies. Adam laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Suit yourself, Jack. But don't come crying to me when you realize you've been played by everyone around you. I turned and left without another word, slamming the door behind me. As I drove home, my thoughts spiraled. Adam's words echoed in my head, feeding my doubts. Was I really the villain in all this? Had my own blindness pushed Rachel into Stephanie's web? Or was Adam just trying to sow chaos, as always? When I got home, I found Rachel waiting on the porch, her face pale and drawn. Jack, she said, her voice trembling. We need to talk. I didn't respond, walking past her into the house. But as I sat down, staring into the emptiness of the living room, I realized she was right. We did need to talk. Because if there was any chance of salvaging the truth from this mess, it started with her. Rachel followed me into the house, her steps hesitant, as though she was walking into enemy territory. I sat down in the living room, my arms crossed, while she hovered near the doorway, twisting her hands together. Jack, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to explain. I need you to understand why things happened the way they did. Then start talking, I said coldly, refusing to meet her eyes. Because all I've heard so far are excuses. She flinched at the harshness in my voice, but took a deep breath and sat down across from me. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she said. I never wanted to hurt you, Jack. I needed you to see me. To really see me again. See you. I barked. Rachel, you planned this with Adam and Stephanie. You lied to me, humiliated me, and for what? To teach me some twisted lesson? It wasn't just me, she said quickly. Stephanie. She pushed me into it. She planted the idea. She told me that if I didn't shake things up, our marriage was doomed. I narrowed my eyes, studying her. And Adam? What about him? Was he just along for the ride? Rachel hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. Adam, he didn't care about the consequences. He just wanted to cause chaos. I should have stopped him, but by the time I realized how far it had gone, it was too late. Her words stirred something in me. Anger, yes, but also a flicker of doubt. Stephanie's involvement had always seemed too perfect, too convenient. Could Rachel be telling the truth? I talked to Adam, I said finally, leaning forward. He told me you've been miserable for years, that you felt invisible. Is that true? Rachel's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. I did feel invisible, Jack. For so long, it felt like I was just there. Like I wasn't a part of your life anymore, just an accessory to it. But I didn't want revenge. That was never my plan. Then what was your plan? I asked, my voice tight with frustration. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you wanted to destroy everything we built together. Her tears spilled over as she shook her head. No, Jack. I wanted to save it. I thought that if I could get you to see me again, to notice me, we could fix things. But Stephanie twisted it. She turned it into something cruel. I leaned back, my mind racing. Rachel's story felt plausible, but it didn't absolve her of guilt. She had still gone along with the prank, still betrayed my trust. And Stephanie's role in all this remained murky, her motives as shadowy as ever. Stephanie, I said, the name like a bitter taste on my tongue. She's been manipulating me too, hasn't she? Feeding me just enough truth to keep me doubting you? Rachel hesitated, then nodded. She's been obsessed with you for years, Jack. She admitted it to me months ago. She said she'd do anything to break us apart, but I didn't believe her. I thought I could control it. I stood, pacing the room as the pieces clicked into place. Stephanie had played us all, using Rachel's insecurities and Adam's recklessness to tear my life apart. But why? What did she gain from all this destruction? Before Rachel could say more, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Stephanie's name flashed on the screen. I picked it up, my hand trembling with anger. What do you want? I demanded. Her voice was calm, almost smug. Jack, I think it's time we talked. Face to face. I clenched my jaw, glancing at Rachel. Fine. Come to the house. Let's settle this once and for all. Rachel's eyes widened, but she said nothing as I hung up. The next hour passed in tense silence until a knock at the door shattered the stillness. I opened it to find Stephanie standing there, her expression calm but her eyes gleaming with anticipation. She stepped inside, her gaze flicking to Rachel. I see you've been talking, she said, her tone icy. This ends now, I said, cutting her off. No more lies, no more games. I want the truth, Stephanie. All of it. Her smile widened, but it was devoid of warmth. The truth? Fine. The truth is, you were too blind to see what was happening in your own marriage. Rachel was miserable. Adam was bored, and I just gave them the push they needed. You destroyed my life, I said, my voice trembling with rage. No, Jack, she replied, stepping closer. I freed you. From Rachel, from your complacency, from a life you didn't even realize was suffocating you. I laughed bitterly. You think you're some kind of savior? You're nothing but a manipulative coward. Stephanie's face darkened, but before she could respond, Rachel stood. Get out, she said, her voice steady. You've done enough. Stephanie's eyes narrowed, but she turned and left without another word. The door slammed behind her, leaving Rachel and me alone. In the days that followed, I began picking up the pieces of my life. Rachel and I separated, but not with anger, just a quiet understanding that too much damage had been done. Stephanie disappeared from the neighborhood, her reputation in shambles, and Adam? He faded into the background, his chaos no longer welcome in our lives. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. The betrayal had hurt, but it had also forced me to confront truths I'd been avoiding. And as I stood in my empty house, I realized I wasn't broken anymore. I was free.